Hello! This is not a review of the Deluxe Legacy Skids, as you all probably have this figure. It is me pointing out some modifications I have done to this figure to allow him to go into little hatchback mode without the tabs struggling to pop back apart like a mousetrap. That has been a common feature on this lad, so I wanted him to be good, so I did lots of stuff to him. Hopefully none of it's visible. Squeeze them legs together, pop out the wheels. All this is pretty standard until we start getting into the transforming the core bits. Obviously I have his windshield up here. You can have it down if you like. Now, the big problem is in here, trying to get all this stuff fit in here and have it not bump against each other. Because previously, these pegs were barely holding this roof on. You know, it would sit like this with it just barely gripping the pegs. What I did was to increase the area in here. Let's see. First, I shaved down the inside edge of this part. Just recently smoothed out the edge of this, but yeah, I sanded down this edge of the bottom of the crotch as well. Get that dust out of there. So that this wasn't bumping into the roof as much. You see how that just kind of foops into place? That's, you know, there's not quite the click as before. But another big thing was this whole section here wasn't as able to push forward as much as it needed to. And so for that, I sanded down this bar here, which you don't want to sand down too much, because this little strip of plastic is the only thing holding the mushroom peg of the crotch in. But what you can shave a little bit more of is, I don't know how visible that is, the back of this. There's an area that's very slightly raised. You can even hear the slight click as it goes off the edge. I have sanded and cut down this as much as I possibly could, so there's not that bumper pressing up against in there. In addition to this, I have shaved the sides of the pegs down a little bit because it felt like it was kind of pushing against on both the inside and outside. I couldn't quite tell whether it was inside or outside, so I just shaved just a little bit on both sides to be sure. But then I sanded quite a bit from the back of the pegs, as I could feel that that's where the pull really was, as this was straining to stretch over the tabs. And so if I gave this a little bit more room here, it would go over a little bit easier. And look at that. Look how that just falls into place. No straining. Nice. So, get this out. Now here was the big revelation that surprised me as I was working all in this area, and I didn't think that plugging in the arms made a difference, but it does, because when the arms are plugged in, that pulls the cab section forward a little bit. And it was pulling it a little bit too much forward, so that when the door closed, actually, let's see, yeah, originally it was like this, where you could see there's that gap between the door and the hood. We don't want that, we want it to be straight. So, and this was a frightening mod to do, because there's no real good angle for this, but if you can see, I took the peg and I shaved off the front of it. Just a smidge. Just enough to allow the arm to peg a little bit further away. Just so it isn't pushing the nose forward really hard. And when you do that, there's still the tiniest bit of gap, but it's close enough. I ain't gonna be angry. So we bring around back. Got the shin flaps there. Last mod that I did was on the doors. Again, like with these tabs, having to like strain to go over the pegs, the doors were straining to pull the halves of it closed. And so on the inside of the tab, shave, 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 shave down this a little bit. Shaved also just the slightest bit from the top too. Go over it with a nail file, and that should, as opposed to like a big, real gritty file, something soft enough, or with a light enough touch that you can go back and forth a little bit, try it, go back and forth enough, try it, because you're wanting like fractions of millimeters here, and you'll know when it just goes into place without much strain. There we go. There's Skids. He's a happy little car now, because there's no longer the worry that all of his pegs and his transparent plastic is going to explode. Ta-ta.